Welcome to this edition of Dufferin Life. I'm your host, Teena Avery. Do you like wine? Are you a wine drinker? Now, I've said oftentimes that I am not a wine drinker. I don't drink wine very often, but I will tell you that I do have an interest in what it's all about. And joining me today, we have Vanessa McKean. She is the vineyard manager for Adamo Estate Wineries. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's truly my pleasure. I mean, I find the process of winemaking, the concept behind it, I don't know a lot about it. I've done a couple tours. Very, very interesting. And I think that something else that's very interesting is winemaking seems to be a very male-dominated industry. If I'm not, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you because you've always been involved in agriculture, I believe, in one way or another.
Yeah, so I actually grew up just outside of Collingwood on Black Angus and Belgian horse farm. So my dad was always farming and agriculture. We lived it. So when it came time to pursue post-secondary education, I was sort of drawn to the wine industry because of the agricultural side of it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so we grow grapes and harvest them, the little fruits of our labor, and then there's the process as well. So it's pretty fascinating, all the different avenues that there is within the wine industry.
Yeah, and I think, and why I say I'm fascinated by it is because there's so many different types of grapes, and there's this and there's that, and there's people whose palates enjoy dry wines and people whose palates enjoy sweet wines, and how do you come up with how to make the wine? And this is why we have Vanessa here, because I don't even know what I'm talking about. But let's talk a little bit about what you do for the Adamo Estate Winery.
So I originally joined the winery in 2020 as the vineyard manager, and then over the course of my time there, I've been able to take on more responsibilities. So now I oversee the winemaking side of things as well. And we've got 18 acres of vines planted there, and we grow Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Noir, Vidal, and Gamay are the most widely planted varieties.
Okay.
So we've selected grapes that are suitable for cool climates.
Right, and I was going to ask you that. So do you have wines where grapes are coming in from different regions as well?
Yeah, so because of our shorter growing season, we do actually purchase some grapes from Niagara as well. In particular, varieties that aren't well suited for our climate, like Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc.
Okay. So in the winery industry, do most wineries, do they work in collaboration with each other?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yep, there's a lot of good relationships that we have in and amongst one another through growers and different wineries.
Okay. So how does it work with the wines that are created? I mean, is it something that's created and this is on the shelf for 10 years, or are you constantly changing the types of wine?
It depends on the variety and the vintage to a certain extent.
Okay.
Generally, your red wines have longer aging potential.
Okay.
And then we do actually make some whites and rosés, which are designed to be consumed while they're younger.
Okay. And you're going right into where I was going to go. How long are wines normally left in a barrel? And as you just said, it depends on the type of wine.
Yeah, so in the barrel, our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are about 10 months in French oak barrels, but then the bigger, heavier reds like Cabernet Franc, Cab Sauv, Merlot, they spend more like 18 to 24 months in the barrels.
Okay. So you must have a very big storage facility for all of this and all these different times, because you'd have to be very organized to kind of confirm like when this barrel's ready to go and when it's ready to be bottled and that whole process.
Yeah, it's logistically a challenge, but we've got a system nailed down now that has good flow throughout the course of the year, so that we're always managing that.
So when you're talking about blends of wines, because some wines are a blend and some, and they're blends of different types of grapes or different types, do you come up with how that's all put together and what it's going to taste like in the end?
For some of the wines, yeah, like and I'm not doing this alone. There's a team of us, so we'll go through and do individual barrel tastings and try and determine which barrels like go well together. Okay. And then there are some wines that we will produce year after year as a single vineyard, single variety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the entire process, like let's start from the beginning. So in the spring, I've seen the vines, they're covered, obviously to keep them through the winter. When about does that come off, and how does that whole process work? And tell me all about it.
So we use geotextiles, which is basically like a felt blanket to cover the vines to help them get through the winter. It's actually quite interesting. The textiles can provide up to a 10-degree difference in temperature between what's going on under the blanket and above. So for vines, that is quite often the difference between having winter injury or not. So we open the blankets up towards the end of May. We do leave them on a little bit longer than other places that use them because we're also relying on them for frost protection. So it's the end of May, we open the blankets up, bud breaks happened, and the canopy starts growing. Okay.
So and how long does it take for it to be, no pun intended, fruitful?
So as soon as the canopy starts growing, it's actually quite early that you can see little clusters developing with the leaves. And then we'll actually do our harvest towards the end of September.
Okay. And it's so funny because I'm sitting here in my head, we're talking, I'm having this conversation, and I'm picturing Lucille Ball squishing grapes in a barrel. So obviously there's a whole process to it. Like there's an automated process as well as the wonderful team that helps you make all this wine.
Yeah, so for our own vineyard, we handpick all our grapes. Because we cover everything with textiles, our fruit zone is very close to the ground. So it is a little bit more labor intensive, but we also are able to select like the best of the bunches that way as well. So there's sort of like a sorting that happens naturally in the vineyard when we're harvesting. And then the grapes go through, some of them go through our destemmer to remove the actual berry from the stem, or depending on the variety, it might go into the press whole cluster as well.
Okay, so some wine uses, like you take the skin off the grape, and then some you keep the skin on?
Yeah, so red wines get their color, flavor, and tannin from contact with the skins during the fermentation. So if you were to actually crush a red wine grape in your hand, the juice that it comes out would essentially be clear.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I'm learning new things. She saw the look on my face. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that. So yeah, and then the skin creates a flavor as well. Like it's a different type of texture. Right. Okay, well I really, I'm like, let me think about this a little bit more. So if you're talking to somebody and they're not a wine drinker, someone like me.
Okay.
Now I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I used to think I was a red wine drinker. Yeah, and then I went on a wine tour. I tried very, very sweet Riesling white wine, liked it. But how do you, what's a good way for me to start, like if I wanted to develop my taste?
I was just going to say, so if I was approaching you as a non-wine drinker, I would probably go for something like a sweeter Riesling. That tends to be the gateway wine to get people introduced to wine. And then slowly from there, I'd probably go for another white wine that was sort of like light but fruity, but maybe a little bit drier. And the other thing too is it really makes a difference what you're having with the wine. Like, so if people have a bad food and wine experience, they'll often blame the wine, whereas maybe they just weren't the right partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did mention that I went on a wine tasting, and it was actually a wine, beer, and whiskey tasting. And I don't drink any of those, but I was willing to try. And it's funny because you're absolutely right. Like even with the beer, they would give you something that you would taste it, and then they would give you something to eat, and then you would taste it again, and it was like a whole new experience. So I can see why people who may not be very familiar with wine, they go out and they try it, and they're like, well, that didn't work. But you're right, it's probably not the wine's fault.
Right, they might say, I don't like that variety, that producer, maybe even that region. And yeah, might not have been the wine's fault at all.
Right, and so and I'm sure it plays a big part of it, but the soil that the vines are growing in. I mean, because there are certain, I would imagine certain places that you can't grow grapes for wine.
Yeah, soil can certainly make a big impact. Like a very general rule of thumb is that vines like well-drained soil. They send their roots down deeper, and then you get more complexity in the grapes. But we're able to change things like the rootstock that the vine is grafted on to help the vines live in different sites.
Okay.
So there's a lot that we can do when we're planning to plant to help mitigate different areas as well.
Okay, so when I know you mentioned it briefly, but let's talk about it. So when the weather isn't cooperative, because you had mentioned damage through the winter time, obviously that affects the production and how much you can produce. But a summer like we had this year was extremely, extremely hot, and then like pouring rain, and then there was like no happy medium in between.
Yeah, it's been a challenging growing season. Generally, grapes do well in sort of like warmer, dry conditions. When things are damp, you get a lot more issues in the vineyard, like from mildew, like downy mildew or powdery mildew. So it just means that we're out keeping an eye on things, really monitoring closely, looking for symptoms of those diseases, and then addressing them as we're seeing them. So part of my job is to scout for pests and disease and adapt our spray program accordingly.
Okay. So I have a question. What can you describe between red, white, there's rosé, there's ice wine. Tell me what makes an ice wine what it is compared to like a regular red or white.
So to make an ice wine, the grapes are left out on the vine well past the regular harvest, and it's got to be -8 or colder when those grapes are harvested and pressed.
Okay.
So what happens is the water in the grape is frozen, and when you press it, all that comes out is concentrated sugar and flavor.
Okay.
So that's why they're very intense and very sweet.
Oh, wonderful. And a rosé is a combination of, I mean, is it a special grape that makes rosé? I really don't know much about wine, so.
So a rosé can be a blend of red wine and white wine, but what we do at Adamo is our rosés are created with rosé in mind. So how I was talking about contact with the skin during fermentation, we'll take a red wine grape like Gamay and put it in the press and do minimal skin contact. So it just takes on that nice sort of blush color and like a little bit of flavor, and but more bright red fruit flavors like strawberry and pomegranate, watermelon, that kind of thing.
These sound like something I would like to enjoy. And I'm gonna, we're just almost out of time, but I want to make sure that I let everybody know that there is a new Frizzante. It's a sparkling wine that is at Adamo, so you need to check it out. Vanessa, I want to thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information and enlightening me and those that are watching.
Thanks for having me.
It was totally my pleasure. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. And so we're still on screen.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
On the next episode of Sonomacine, film critics Shaquille Lambert and Matt Rohrbeck turn the tables on the fall festival season and talk about the infamous Saw franchise. I apologize in advance.
Welcome back to Dufferin Life. If you're just tuning in, you tuned in at a great time. It's always a great time to tune in and into the show and find out what's happening in the community. And I have two guests joining me to talk about an event that's coming up very, very soon in support of some great organizations. So joining me, we have Len Meyer. He is the president of the Rotary Club of Orangeville Highlands, and we have Marianne Tate, who is, I believe, a committee member for this event we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to give it away. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Marianne, why don't you start by telling me what is the event that I've been alluding to but not yet said the name of?
Well, it's our annual Taste of Autumn Gala.
Okay.
So it's a gala dinner and dance.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about what to expect at this particular event.
Well, we will be serving a wonderful meal that's catered by Gourmandissimo, and there'll be a lovely sparkling wine when we arrived, and we can stand around and visit a bit and see our friends from the community, and then we sit down and have dinner, and we have beautiful wines selected for our dinner, and then there'll be the silent auction.
Okay.
And a live auction as well.
Ooh, live auctions are a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
They always are.
Oh, they are. Len, tell me a little bit. Let's get into the specifics. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the whens and the wheres, and how people get tickets.
So you can get tickets at the website. It's tasteofautunn.ca. There's lots of information about the event, the sponsors, the beneficiaries. It's going to be happening at the Best Western this year, October 21st. Lots of information online about the event.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty about the event. I understand, and I'm going to say congratulations, even though it's not quite 30 years, but you're celebrating 29 years with this event,
That's right, yes.
which is absolutely amazing.
It's been a long-standing tradition for the club, absolutely.
And is it one of your larger fundraisers?
It is the largest fundraiser we have. Okay,
and then let's hop right into that. Let's talk about the fundraising, because the Rotary Club of Orangeville Highlands, you are always, everything that you do is in a way to give back to the community. So the Taste of Autumn, who is this benefiting?
Each year we try to choose different charities where the need is greatest. What we've been doing for the last few years is have a regular beneficiary, which is our community choice grants.
Okay.
Which is, I was here at the beginning of the year talking about that, where we essentially let the community choose some charities, local charities that receive grants. And this year we've also chosen the men's shelter. They're just up and running, so they need it, and we have chosen Days for Girls. So those are the three major beneficiaries this year. And we usually have some money left over that goes to some other causes as well. Okay,
so let's talk about these causes specifically. So the men's shelter has just recently opened. There hasn't been open for very long, and I hear a rumor that there might be a risk of them not having enough funds to continue. And I think it's the choice of helping to support them is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do what we can. It's always difficult. It is a big operation they're doing, and it's certainly something worthwhile. We're going to do what we can.
Well, and I think that's it too. I mean, and I'm not going off of what you're doing from right now, but just bringing up that point and just making people aware of what's going on. The men's shelter is an important organization for the community. So if you find a way that you're able to support it, like these lovely people are supporting it, and help to keep it open, I think that would be absolutely great. And then the Days for Girls. Tell me a little bit about that one.
I'll listen to Marianne.
Okay. The Days for Girls is an organization, an international organization. We'll be supporting the Canadian version of it, and it provides products for girls for their monthly needs, and especially in a developing world, developing countries, the girls can't go to school unless they're properly prepared.
Right.
And so this allows them to go to schools 4 weeks a month.
Right, and that's vitally important.
Yeah.
And I think too, in it growing, so the funds themselves, do they stay within the community or they go to those needing countries?
Well, they will go to the Canadian version, and they will distribute to the international as well. Yeah.
And I think that's so important now as well, because I think even for what we consider like a regular family, like everything is, there's things that people need and they can't always afford, and you want to make sure that something like those particular products They're a necessity.
It's become an equity issue, so yeah, and it's a great way to help out the girls. And then with the homeless shelter, we're helping out the men through food security for the Choices Men's Shelter, and yeah.
I think that's great. And Lynn, let's talk about, because you were here talking about the community grants that you do.
Correct. Yeah.
And it was before the grants were released, so can you tell us who ended up winning the grants? Do you?
Oh, you're testing my memory now.
I am.
It was the Horticultural Society was one winner. We had the Dufferin Arts Council. Marianne, help me out here.
So the one you mentioned at the beginning, the
Horticultural?
No, the Dufferin area decaf, wasn't it?
Decaf?
Yeah,
Decaf,
yeah. And the other one was, oh my goodness.
Well, it's okay. I was just curious. That was more curiosity.
Wasn't it
it's a great question.
Ackle Choir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. And each time that you do put those grants out, it's done by nomination online, is it not?
Correct, yes. Yeah. And we're actually going to be revamping the program a little bit this year. We're going to start a little bit earlier in the year because people tend to be really busy in the spring. So we're actually going to launch that in the new year.
Okay.
January 1st in all likelihood. And it's going to be the same thing again. People get nominated, the charities get listed, and people get to vote on who they want to support.
And I think that's where you come in, right?
Yes.
Like that's where you guys come in, because I mean things like this happen all the time, and there are so many well-needed organizations and not-for-profit groups and committees and events that that gives you an opportunity to help support maybe one of your favorites, right? So I think that's really important. So I'm going to ask, and if you don't know, that's okay. So do we know what the menu is for the Taste of Autumn, or is that like a surprise for when people buy their tickets?
Well, I'll give you a little hint.
Okay.
Last year we had short rib beef, and this year, since the short ribs were so popular, we're going with a filet mignon au sauce poivre.
Yeah. I love filet mignon. I can tell you how much, though. Yeah, no, that sounds absolutely delicious. So let's talk about, are you still in need of like auction donations? Do you need those? I mean, I know we're getting closer to the event.
Always.
Always,
we never turn anything down, and it's usually the week before the event. Ideally we'd have everything 2 months in advance, but that's just not realistic.
No.
Usually what happens is the week before we actually end up collecting a lot, right? With
the final crunch.
Exactly, with a lot of people coming through last minute. So.
Yeah, you know what? I love this community, and I always say that, and I think we're in a wonderful community. But I will say, you guys are all last minute people. No matter the event I'm helping or helping to promote, you've always got that last push. So we're giving you that last push. If you have any items to donate for the silent or live auction, definitely communicate that with go through the website, thetasteofautumn.ca. Go through there and reach out and see if you can do that. And let's talk about the actual club itself, because we have talked about it, but I think that, I mean, there's a need and a push to kind of keep these types of clubs going, and the world has changed so drastically. So tell me a little bit about Rotary and how people can get involved and what the commitment is like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can say about Rotary and the history of it, but really what I find is that Rotary is really a good tool to support whatever you're passionate about. Right? It's not a charity that focuses on one thing or another. It's an organization that gives you the tools to support things that you're passionate about. Right? They're constantly expanding, seeing where there's a need. If someone comes forward with a good idea, Rotary gives you the tools to be able to do it effectively, right? Whether we're tackling climate change, whether it's mental health, whether it's human trafficking. There's all kinds of problems that a lot of people aren't aware of, but some people are very passionate about. And it's really about getting people together, educating where the need is, and then tackling it together.
And you know what? That's what I love about this show. This is why I love doing this show, is because I like to help create awareness. Like Cry Not, when you're talking about human trafficking, has been on the show, and you don't think some of these things are happening in your own community. And there are those passionate people that you're talking about that join wonderful groups like you have, so that they can help forward the awareness and forward the need for these different types of individuals. And then of course there are the groups in town that have been here for years that still need that support in order to run, because government funding isn't always available for every organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the event. Is it a secret? I mean, are there really, is there any auction items that are standing out for you that, you know, to entice those people to come out?
For the live auction, we always have a ton of fun, right? Sometimes we have vacations to give away, Leafs tickets with a hotel stay.
Nice.
I think this year we also have a barbecue coming in, brand new. So there's always a ton of exciting stuff, and you know, the live auction is always a lot of fun. Our MC this year is David Nairn, really fun guy, right?
I was just about to say, who's your MC? David Nairn. Well, you guys are all familiar with David Nairn. You know I love him to pieces, and he is so entertaining.
Yeah, a real firecracker. So.
Yeah, he is for sure, and he will be on top of all those items, making sure that you're getting top dollar for everything. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, so you know, tends to be a lot of fun because the people that attend are, you know, always a lot of fun. It's the sense of community that's there, right? It's not a huge event. It's still small enough to be intimate, but big enough to have a lot of fun, right? There's some more serious moments. We were here from the charities that are impacted, and there's more fun moments where we're, you know, maybe having a drink and dancing a little bit, and it's just a great evening overall.
Well, let's talk about that. How many people normally attend the event?
I think this year we're capping at 150 people.
Okay. That's a good size event.
Yep.
Like that's a nice number for sure. And let's talk a little bit about how much the tickets are and how people can access that information or get their tickets.
Absolutely.
Yes, so you can get the tickets online. We have about 25 left. We're almost sold out. And so if you go to the Taste of Autumn website, and
the push is on, the crunch is on.
Yes.
So some of you bought your tickets, but there's only 25 left. So don't wait. I mean, stay with us for now. We're going to be here in a couple of minutes. Stay with us for now, but then and just get your device out and help support some amazing organizations, and a wonderful organization that helps so many in the community. So we've got about a minute left. Let's talk about some of the things that have been accomplished by Rotary.
Okay.
So locally, we've many years funded the hospital, and then we switched to other organizations. For example, the last year, our big donation was towards the Alzheimer's Society, and we also supported Ukraine in funding that, and in the past we've supported other organizations as well.
Amazing, amazing. So this is an opportunity to have delicious food, fun times, a little bit of dancing, a little bit of David Nairn if you can handle him. But I want to thank you both for joining us, and I wish you all the success for your event.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
It was completely my pleasure. And thank you for joining us, and until next time, bye-bye for now.
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Was that 4 or 5? He's lost count and still thinks he can drive. Do you think he knows that when he is caught and charged with impaired driving, he'll lose his license?